Hello and welcome. I'm George Crump, lead analyst with Storage Switzerland. Today we're going to talk about HyperV and HyperV storage, and more specifically how to make sure that storage does not eat the savings you may be realizing by investing in HyperV. Joining me to help with that conversation is StarWind Software Product Manager, Max Kolomyeytsev. Max, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for asking. Thanks.
So we'll go over a few things today. We're going to talk about the kind of the four key things we think you need to look at when you start examining HyperV solutions. And then also, I do want to remind everybody that by attending today's webinar, you get a exclusive copy of our latest white paper, 3 Keys to Cost-Effective HyperV Storage. That's available in the attachments section. There's also available a product analysis that we just did on the StarWind solution that actually has just been published, so that's not available to anybody outside of the webinar either. So feel free to download both of those, and there's also a bunch of different attachments that you can peruse as we're going through the presentation. From a audio perspective, all the audio is through your speakers. There is no dial-in, so if you're scrambling around looking for a phone number, don't. It's all through your speakers. Go ahead and put maybe some headphones on and sit back and enjoy the presentation. The good thing about our platform is you'll get a recording of this presentation made available about 5 minutes after the presentation is done. You don't have to re-register to watch any of our on-demand webinars. Once you've registered once, you can get to all of them. We have well over 80 webinars available for you to listen to at this point. You can get to those by going to storageswiss.com, and then there's a content bar there. If you click the pull down, and one of the options there is webinar. Oh, also let me mention that there is a application for both iPhones, iPads, and Android devices, so you can download those and watch the webinars either streamed or downloaded onto your particular device. So feel free to do that as well. Also, in the terms of logistics, be on the lookout for a couple of polling questions, just to help Max and I fine-tune the presentation to what you guys are looking for. You can ask us questions at any time by clicking on the Ask a Question button. That should be visible in your player, sort of in the middle there. If you are watching us on demand, please just go ahead and tweet us questions at Storage Swiss. Just refer to in some way to the presentation. For example, in this one you can say HyperV storage question or HyperV storage webinar or something like that. At the end of the presentation, if you would take a moment to provide us some feedback, you should have a Rate This button available to you. It's a 5-star rating system with 5 stars being the best. For those that don't know me, again, I'm George Crump. I'm the founder of Storage Switzerland, also the lead analyst. My areas of expertise, primarily I focus on performance optimization and also data protection. I obviously do a lot in virtualized storage architectures, both in the Hyper-V and VMware space. I do a lot of talks, white papers, chalk talk videos around all these different technologies. And prior to founding Storage Switzerland, which actually was almost 8 years ago now, I had 25 years of experience as a CIO working for a large storage integrator, and we integrated a variety of manufacturers' products for data centers across the United States. From a Storage Switzerland perspective, obviously we're a analyst firm. We focus on storage, and how cloud and virtualization sort of intersect with those markets. We gain knowledge of these through product testing, interaction with users and suppliers, as well as sitting right beside you as an end user and helping you with your installations. We don't typically get involved in installations as a business. It's more of a kind of verify what we've been working on in the lab. The results of all this work can be found on our website, storageswiss.com. There's articles, videos, webinars, product analysis, case studies, now also podcasts, just a variety of different information. Pretty much anywhere you want to receive information, we've got it there. So again, you can just go to storageswiss.com. We typically have 2 to 3 new pieces of content a day, so certainly I suggest that you go at least 2 to 3 times a day. Max, why don't you give the folks a little background on yourself and then also StarWind?
Sure. Thanks. So, my name is Max Kolomyeytsev. I'm the product manager for StarWind Virtual SAN. Previously, I had more than 7 years experience of quality and assurance and technical support at StarWind Software, and before StarWind existed, I also worked at Rocket Division Software, which was actually the mothership company for StarWind Software. So that gives more than 10 years of IT experience, primarily in the storage virtualization area. And right now, I'm really focused on areas like, of course, storage virtualization, new storage technologies like innovative diable RAM, all the new stuff we see coming in the 21st century. And I'm specifically interested in VDI technology, server virtualization, and in memory computing. I also host the StarWind Technical Webinar Series, which can be viewed on our website if you have a wish to see more technical side of the storage virtualization. And about actual company I'm working for, so StarWind actually been in business since 2003 when first version was released, and that was actually around when iSCSI technology itself appeared. And as storage and virtualization started to emerge, StarWind spun off from Rocket Division Software and got VC funding. And since that time, StarWind is on the edge of storage virtualization solutions, and we continue to innovate. Our primary product is StarWind Virtual SAN Suite. We have more than 250,000 paying and playing customers around the globe, and that is, I would say, more than 100,000 paying customers around the globe. We have headquarters in Boston, Massachusetts, and we've now grown to more than 50 people, and I'm not sure if we'll grow beyond 100 this month or next month. We do provide 365, 24/7 customer care, and we have industry leader companies as our global alliance partners. Okay. And George, I guess we have a following question for our audience, which
Yep, we sure do. So
something with the HyperV.
Yep. So let's get some feedback from you guys watching the webcast here. Which best describes your HyperV plans? Is it that you're considering rolling it out, so you're sort of still in the HyperV investigation phase? Are you a HyperV only implementation? Are you using HyperV in a remote office? I'm sorry. Are you a mixed VMware and HyperV deployment? Or are you using HyperV in a remote office? So we'll let people go ahead and answer as it fits. So Max, right now, about 55% are indicating that they're a HyperV only implementation, and then about basically tied for second is you're either considering a rollout or they're mixing VMware and HyperV. Any surprises in these results here to you?
Actually, I would not say that I'm really surprised. So using HyperV in remote office could be more, but that can actually depend on the amount of people we have on HyperV setups and new HyperV rollouts. But I really see that industry trends for HyperV only implementations are growing, and that's really good to see. So Microsoft really started to emerge with 2012 R2 and HyperV 3. So we may actually see the number of 70 and more if we make another webinar in, say, 3 months when people come back from their summer vacations and actually roll out the thing. So that 17% who are considering a rollout will return from the seaside and decide that, yeah, it's definitely time to roll out Hyper-V implementation.
Right, exactly. So I think that so we'll go ahead and stop it there. About 50% of our attendees anyways are Hyper-V only. About 25% are mixing VMware and Hyper-V. About 17% are considering a rollout. About 8% are using Hyper-V for remote office type of work. So thank you very much for that information. We'll kind of fine-tune what we say to those results. So let's kind of get started with where we see the value of Hyper-V. It's sort of interesting, you know, the domination of VMware in the virtualized space certainly can't be denied. And Hyper-V, I think, had a little trouble getting out of the gates, but I think it's really found its stride now. And where we see people considering it is where they're looking to provide some cost savings to their environments. And some of those polling questions are good examples of that, right, where remote offices tends to be a popular selection. I would guess that many of the people that are mixing Hyper-V and VMware see this as a way to offset some costs and move different types of virtual machines into a Hyper-V environment than maybe you would have in a VMware environment, again, to drive down that licensing cost. So that's a big issue. Max, is cost one of the top reasons people really consider, or cost savings, I should say, one of the top reasons that people consider Hyper-V over, say, VMware?
Well, I would say not only costs, but also the fact that for remote offices especially, people try to implement things which are familiar to network administrators. So say if 99% of your virtual machines run Windows, why not run Windows on one level lower? So instead of learning VMware, network administrators just use the tool they know how to work with and deploy their environments in Hyper-V.
Right, and I think that kind of ties into our second bullet there, that tight integration with Windows Server, right? The fact that if you are either a mostly or a 100% Windows environment, that the step, if you will, to Hyper-V it probably seems a little bit simpler to you because you're just used to that Windows environment, right?
Right. Well, I'm not saying that VMware is actually extremely difficult to understand. VMware is also quite intuitive, but some people just know that I know Windows, and that's the mark where I'm staying at. I know that Hyper-V does the job well. I know that I can configure it. Then why change something if it works? Right.
The other thing that, and again, this might be a reason why it appeals to remote offices and to kind of that large, small to medium-sized business, is that it has a nice shared nothing VM migration capability. Do you see a lot of people using that type of feature?
Yeah, really, a lot of SMBs build their Hyper-V infrastructure, and they really love this feature. So shared nothing live migration, then Hyper-V replica are two killer features from Hyper-V, which completely satisfy a lot of SMBs. So with this,
so I think that the key is that with those you don't need necessarily, at least up front, you don't necessarily need shared storage, so you can get a lot of that sort of maintenance type of functionality without having to share anything. The other thing, I think that I don't know if this is an immediate value to a customer, but certainly I think you can talk to this as a software developer. Vendors kind of get a lower level of access with Hyper-V, or there's a better, I don't want to say API set, but a path to be able to get into the operating system layers. What's the right way to say that?
I would actually say that both platforms, both Hyper-V and VMware, provide a good level of access. So there's a lot of documentation, there's a lot of stuff. But if we tie it to the previous point where Windows administrators know Windows platform, that makes them more comfortable with Hyper-V. So it's not really about, it's not about the difficulty, it's about the stuff you know how to do. and the stuff you don't know how to do. So
Right.
it's like
Yeah.
if you have a welding machine, you know that spot welding may do the job, but you have your old equipment and you still do it with the old equipment and it works. So why change it?
Exactly. So, and then let's kind of focus in on the sort of the lower dependence on shared storage with Hyper-V. And clearly Microsoft has a strong track record of enabling direct attached storage. We saw it in, especially like an Exchange is a good example. And as we've kind of mentioned, shared nothing live migration is sort of Hyper-V's answer to doing that. But I think the key point here is this migration really, it enables planned VM movement, and so it really has to be a scheduled event, right? It's not something that you would necessarily use for disaster recovery or a server failure. Is that right?
Yeah, that's actually correct. So Microsoft enables you to do controlled shutdowns, controlled power outages, stuff like that. But the picture changes dramatically if we talk about unplanned stuff. So any power outage, any disaster in your location, that means at least 20 minutes of the recovery point objective, and recovery time objective depends on the administrator skills. So yeah, Microsoft can do very well with just local storage, but if your company requires something automatic and requires your RPO and RTO zeroed, in this case, shared storage is the only answer.
So let's talk about that then. So we sort of touched on this. Shared nothing migration is really good for planned downtime. The downtime impact, if it's just a sudden server outage or a sudden hard drive crash, something like that, it can be significant. I've heard typically 20 to 30 minutes of downtime in that situation. Is that about what you typically talk to people about?
Well, it all depends. So if you have it planned, it can be as little as 5 minutes. But yeah, with an unplanned downtime, it's about 20 to 30 minutes for each virtual machine. And it may get a little more if you have multiple virtual machines failing over. So, and at the end of the day, it still requires manual intervention. So we also have the factor of administrators' reaction to that disaster. And there is something with the...
So the administrator has to be available and recognize the fact that there's been some sort of an outage, correct?
Yeah, and also administrator has to have access to that system, at least remotely. And if we're talking about disasters or power outages, there may be no way to get into the system other than go into the server room directly, which may not be a very good idea and very pleasant trip if it's 2 a.m. and we're talking about a hurricane or something similar.
Right. And then I would say that what we typically see then is that really for if you want us to be able to survive and survive quickly a server or a disk failure, then a shared storage system is really much better for recovery. And if we start to talk about Hyper-V in sort of a business class environment, whether that be a remote office or that be one of the 50% of the people that were considering a Hyper-V only implementation, really you need shared storage to be able to provide that kind of high level of uptime, quick recovery from an outage, the automation that we're kind of alluding to, making sure all of that works together really requires shared storage.
Yeah, completely agree with that. And good thing is that shared storage has become, that you just changed the slide to the relevant topic.
So the challenge typically, though, with shared storage is that shared storage really increases cost, right? So, if we say, okay, look, you really need shared storage to deploy Hyper-V in business, you're looking at Hyper-V to reduce costs, and then we immediately add a layer of cost to it, sort of that cost savings, and that's where we got sort of the title for this webinar. The storage starts to eat into the savings you are hoping to realize with Hyper-V, right? Because first of all, shared disk arrays are more expensive, obviously, than local storage. There's a network infrastructure typically that that supports the shared array, and that typically is more expensive. And in some cases, the shared storage system may require special skills that, especially in sort of that medium-sized business or remote office, may not be available, right? And so keeping these costs contained really becomes a big issue for the environment. And so, what we see as a result of that is there's this Hyper-V has this pressure to become more affordable, right? That, again, a major reason that people consider Hyper-V is for cost savings, right? Even some of the cool features that we've talked about, like shared nothing migration, were designed to help people keep costs down, right? And so the moment you need to pull this thing into production, make it business class, and require shared storage, you sort of get this, compression happening on your dollar, and that's what that kind of that picture is trying to say. The other thing is that we want to keep the environment simple. Again, for the remote office, the medium-sized business, we probably don't have the budget and headcount to hire storage expertise and then virtual server expertise and then the networking expertise. It's in many cases it's probably one person or nobody and then managed remotely. Hey, Max, in your experience, is that what you see in like remote offices and medium-sized businesses? Is that there's not generally all these different specialists? There's generally a guy that just wears all the hats, right?
Right. It's no dedicated IT management staff mostly, and I've seen a lot of robo locations actually killed not by implementing shared storage or just implementing something, but then realizing the hidden cost of the operating expenses for that solution. So This may be not, you get a big volume discount on the actual storage products or just products you purchase for the remote locations, but then the company which sells you that actually benefits from selling you their support contracts. And when you see the checks coming in and you multiply them by the number of your locations, that just completely, it doesn't eat the savings, it completely annihilates them.
So we titled the webinar wrong. So the operational costs are really what we're concerned with here. Is a lot of times you can get the initial implementation up and going, but keeping it running a lot of times can be the challenge. So what we have to really then look at is establishing a different set of requirements for these type of Hyper-V environments. Again, the remote office, the medium-sized business, people like that. And if you look at that, what we really boil it down to is number one, obviously you've got to keep it very cost effective. Number two, since it is Hyper-V, you want to keep it Windows native, right? You don't want to introduce another operating system into the environment if you don't have to. You want to be able to leverage current server and storage capabilities. And then finally, you want to have choice. You want to have flexibility in what you use and how you use it and when you use it. So Max, let's kind of detail each one of these. First, let's talk about keeping it cost effective, right? So the first thing we see that as a good way to do this is to abstract the storage software from the storage hardware, right? And so what that gives me is the ability to some flexibility in where I place the storage intelligence. It means I don't have to go out and buy a siloed or dedicated array piece of hardware, which generally adds to costs. And then to take that software and to integrate it into the compute hypervisor layer. And now, Max, integrating into or on the hypervisor is different than just running the storage software as a virtual machine, isn't it?
It is two completely different scenarios, I would say. So they do similar things at the end of the day, but when you see it behind the scenes, running inside the hypervisor is much more beneficial, but it is available to much less companies. So pretty much, I would say 5 to 6 companies are doing inside hypervisor layer storage virtualization. So let's say VMware Virtual SAN is the main example of nowadays virtualization for VMware, and there are few more for Hyper-V, and other platforms have developed their own solutions like Zen server with DRBD, and then we also see what was another storage system? Okay, I don't remember the name. Sorry. Yeah, so basically running inside a virtual machine, it's okay, but it may do the thing which we're trying to avoid, which is introducing a Linux type of storage appliance into a complete Windows environment, which is not the thing administrators in remote offices and SMBs would like to see.
Right, exactly. And I think that's really sort of the key component there. The other thing that kind of ties into this cost-effective, and we'll bring this up a couple of times, is to keep high availability affordable. And I have there as sort of a sub-bullet, don't require a third node. And so a lot of times when we start talking about abstracting storage software and running that storage software in the compute or hypervisor layer, what that often means is that a lot of vendors will use 3 nodes to deliver high availability and redundancy and things like that. Well, Max, in the work that I've been involved with, many times the remote office or the medium-sized business is very well served by 2 physical servers, not 3, and forcing them to go to the expense of a third system with storage and memory and networking and all that sort of stuff just adds to the cost and certainly can add a little layer of complexity. Do you agree?
I completely agree with that. So basically, we can run everything off 1 node in a remote office, but we cannot do it technically because we require fault tolerance and redundancy. So we can double it, but I really don't see why we should triplicate things where we can just have them duplicate, especially with a lot of locations.
Right. Well, and especially when you consider the power of a single server nowadays to drive most of what needs to happen in a remote office, right? And so to your point, the doubling it makes sense so you can keep the system up and running. Running it in triple, especially across a large number of remote offices, can get quite expensive. So we'll touch on that some more as well. The other thing is to do what we call keep it Windows native, right? HyperV is a Windows, obviously, environment, and one of its attractions, as we alluded to earlier, is that if I'm a Microsoft Windows guy and I get Microsoft Windows, I don't know if I want to introduce something else into the environment if I don't have to. And so there's a lot of these abstracted solutions that really all they've done is they've abstracted from physical hardware, but they still need a virtual piece of hardware, if you will. And so they still run in sort of a non-Windows virtual machine, like Max said, typically Linux is common. Again, I don't think Max and I have anything against Linux. It's just in this particular use case where we're talking about Windows and Windows Server and Hyper-V, introducing another operating system into the environment can increase complexity. And I talk about sort of the pure Windows environment there, and depending on the data center, the idea of a single operating system environment is becoming more rare. But if there's going to be a pure Windows pure environment, it's almost always going to be Windows based. It's very rare that I see a pure Linux environment, and certainly a pure HPUX or AIX environment is a thing of the past. And so that becomes a big thing. So Max, from your experiences, is that what I see is a lot of, at a minimum, heavy Windows environments, and if I'm going to see a single operating system environment, it typically is Windows. Is that what you see as well?
That's what I see in most parts of the world. So I would say that non-Windows, pure non-Windows environments, I've only seen them in Eastern Europe, in some deployments where people are really concerned about licensing costs because of the Windows Server pricing and the support level they get there. So it could have been not a choice made because of Windows price, but because of the level of support you get in that part of the world. But obviously, if we're talking US and if we're talking Europe, it's 99% pure Windows and nothing else.
Right, exactly. So then let's talk also about leveraging the current hardware. You know, as you start to deploy this type of a solution in remote offices and things like that, you know, what we find, and we talked about it a little bit earlier, is in many cases the remote office nowadays can run off of a single server. We want virtualization to sort of play traffic cop and keep applications from running over each other and one application crashing from impacting another. But in general, from a physical hardware and compute process memory capability, a single physical host can do the job. Certainly, worst case, two can. So our big thing there is to leverage that hardware, run that software on top of that hardware. So what we're talking about here again is this moving the storage services off of dedicated storage arrays, putting the storage services to be processed into the host itself, and allow the host, which again probably has excess processing power, to be better amortized and do more functions. One of those functions being storage software. And then again, as we touched on earlier, is don't require additional nodes for availability, right? So leverage current hardware, don't force the buy of additional hardware, and then also leverage internal server storage. So most servers come with better quality disk and flash technology than say consumer or laptop would. So they're generally very good quality devices, and many servers nowadays have plenty of unless you're sort of a blade server, most servers have plenty of internal capacity to deliver the capacity needs of most remote offices and small businesses. Max, from your experience, what's your take on leveraging internal storage? Can we get enough capacity generally on a server to satisfy the demands of most remote offices and medium-sized businesses?
Oh yeah, and we can actually have lots of space with just local storage from those servers. So thing is that building a one big RAID 10 for a single server in your environment is completely sufficient to run most of the virtualization workloads you can imagine for a small business company or remote office. And if you're using some sort of centralization, let's say you host Exchange 365, you use some services from your main office where they have all the fancy equipment, and you replicate the unnecessary and old data to the central office, local storage of the servers you have in your global locations is completely sufficient. I would say you can actually cut it in half, and it will still be sufficient to run everything you need for a global location.
Okay, and then the last point here is provide storage choices. And really the funny thing here is what we're going to suggest sounds kind of counterintuitive with all the marketing hype that's out there today, but don't require SSDs, right? So there's many remote office environments that have absolutely no need for flash or SSDs. I'm a big fan of flash. I'm a big fan of SSDs. But putting them in there when they're not needed doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense either. So you want the ability to leverage SSDs and flash, and again, leveraging it server side is a great way to do it very cost effectively. But if you have a remote office that just isn't ever going to need the performance of SSD, why go to the expense of using it? And then sort of on the opposite side of the equation, there may be environments that have a shared storage system already in place, and they just need to be able to maybe manage it better, have it more integrated into HyperV, or be able to extend it with both the shared storage device and local internal storage. So you want the flexibility to do all of those things. Use SSD when you want to. Use hard drives only when that's all you need. Leverage external shared storage when it either makes sense to or it's already in place. So really what you want is flexibility. You don't want to have to have anything dictated to you as far as what you can and can't use. That flexibility, is that something that you see come up a lot? Is it the importance of that, Max?
Definitely. So if we're talking about small businesses Well, they may be interested in SSD stuff, but they would like to implement it when they grow to the size where they actually need it. If we're looking at some storage virtualization solutions, they have quite strict HCL, and you need to have identical set of drives on the same servers, and you need those SSDs, and you may need specific equipment in your remote office for that. So this actually kills the whole idea of being flexible. So flexibility is the king with virtualized stuff. So we start when you have your hypervisor, which can install mostly on any server, and the HCLs are really big. Virtual storage still has quite strict HCLs, and that's what we're trying to break here, to make it more flexible and have a better variety of choice for the customers who are implementing these solutions.
So, and just to clarify there, because sometimes we get guilty of using three-letter acronyms too much, but so when Max is saying HCL, he's talking about hardware compatibility list, and that's basically what the operating system / hypervisor will support either internally or externally. So you want to make sure that those are in line. So Max, why don't we've talked a lot and we sort of hinted about ways to do this. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the StarWind Virtual SAN and how it would plug in and meet those requirements?
Definitely. So first of all, I guess I'm not sure if every attendee knows what StarWind is and what we do specifically. So StarWind Virtual SAN is a software-based hypervisor-centric virtual machine storage platform. And so what we do, we create a fully fault-tolerant storage pool, which is built for virtualization workloads. We mirror existing inexpensive internal storage between servers, and then this results in the fact that we don't need a expensive hardware SAN or NAS or any other physical shared storage. So what StarWind actually gives you as a solution or as a software is it zeroes your hardware footprint. So it basically allows you to use existing servers you have in your office or in your robo locations without any additional networking hardware, additional switches and stuff like that. So we can directly connect two servers between each other. This will form a solid backend for highly available storage in your machines. Then being virtual and not requiring any additional hardware results in reduced operating expense because you don't have to upgrade your storage hardware. You don't have to pay double or triple prices for the support contract as your storage hardware gets old. So if your server got old, you just throw it away, sell it, do whatever you do with old servers. You still have the storage software, and you can update it anytime, and you get all new fancy features with every update. So this keeps your OpEx really, really low. And another thing we had discussed previously during the webinar is complete fault tolerance with just two servers. So a lot of solutions require 3 servers to be highly available. And I can understand that there should be a third entity existing to, let's say, arbiter the solution. If something goes wrong and you cannot synchronize between 2 locations, so there has to be a quorum. So StarWind has a design which can build a completely robust environment with just 2 servers, and if you want, there is additional virtual entity which will act as an arbiter, but it may be any device in your network. So it does not necessarily mean that you need same big server with lots of hard drives acting as a third server. No. So we have 2 servers doing the job, and we have tiny arbiter, if you like, sitting as a virtual machine somewhere else, or it may be your laptop. Let's see. And being an all Windows application, we don't require any specialized stuff to manage. So StarWind is something really easy and intuitive. It's native Windows application. It has standard Windows wizards for creating storage. And really, if we had a live demonstration, I would create a cluster, a fully fault-tolerant and highly available cluster in under 30 minutes using a step-by-step guide and having 2 servers with the operating system pre-installed. So this said, I'd like to get a bit detailed about the actual solution and how it works. So I'll push it to the next slide. Here's a basic diagram. So our basic 2-node setup, which can fit all of the virtual machines and all of your applications there and provide full tolerance for them. So what we do, we take local storage. So this may be a RAID array you have in the system. You know it as D drive in your system, the same D drive on the second server. So StarWind puts its virtual files on this local storage and then uses your standard network cards to synchronize the data between these servers. What it does then, it passes through this storage back to the operating system using direct memory access, which is faster than 10 gigs, so it acts as a very fast cache as well. And these 2 boxes see the storage as a single shared storage resource, while on the back end, it's actually just their local storage. So at the end of the day, you get a fully functional, fault-tolerant cluster hosting all your virtual machines with no dedicated shared storage and your storage virtualization software being hardwareless and sitting inside the hypervisor, not running as a virtual machine. So I think that's all for the explanations. I don't want to get too technical about it. So if you want to have a more technical explanation, I think we can always share our white papers and we can always share our videos for those who would like to know the in-depth and behind-the-scenes technology for StarWind Virtual Set.
Okay, Max, thanks for that quick overview of the product. And like Max said, you can there's some papers on the attachment section. They'll give you more details, and they can set up to do a demo for you as well. And we'll have contact information here in a second. We're going to go ahead and move to the question and answer phase of the presentation. So we've got about quite a few questions in the queue. We should be able to get to those. So if you want to ask a question and have us talk to any specific requirements or questions that you might have, please feel free to go and do that now by clicking on the Ask a Questions button. Before we do that, though, just as a reminder, because I've already seen this question come in, a recording of this presentation will be available about 5 minutes after we're done speaking here today. The same URL you use to get to the live version is the same URL you'll use to get to the on-demand version, so you don't have to change your links or anything like that. And then that, like I said, that also gives you access to all the other webinars we've done. And then as a reminder, all the attachments are available to you, the white papers that Max had mentioned, as well as our product analysis on the StarWind solution, as well as our paper on the 3 keys to cost-effective Hyper-V storage. I also, if you want a quick overview of kind of what we're talking about, there's also a Chalk Talk video that we did that has a sort of just a walkthrough of the product. So that'll, hopefully all those will be of help to you. Max, let's go ahead and if you're ready, go ahead and talk about some of the questions, or answer some of the questions that we have here. First up, can I create a StarWind cluster bigger than 2 nodes?
Oh yeah, definitely. So StarWind supports scaling out beyond 64 nodes, which 64 here is the current limit cluster size of the Hyper-V cluster, and StarWind can scale further. So if Microsoft changes the maximum number of nodes, we'll be able to scale beyond 64 nodes, mirroring storage and also providing HA access to the virtual machines.
Okay. And then the other question is, and I kind of ties into this, and be curious to get your take on it. A two-node system is actually not highly available, since when you need to do maintenance on node 1 or node 2, you're not in a high available state at that moment. You want to comment on that? It's really not a question. I think it's more of a comment. But you want to comment on that?
Well, I would say that in this case, even a 64-node setup is not highly available, because if you need to do maintenance on 64 nodes, you're not highly available during that time. So it's really about how you approach and manage your configuration. So, but typically a two-node environment can be managed by doing maintenance on one node and then doing maintenance on the second node. And that's what I've typically seen when people, let's say, updated from old StarWind installations to new StarWind installations and changed the operating system and storage at that time. So with just 2 servers, I've seen seamless operations and updates performed under 4 hours. So we're talking about complete hardware change. So customer upgraded from old DL380s to the newer series of DL380s.
Right, and I also think that, part of this is being realistic about the situation we're placing it in. If we're talking about a medium-sized business or a remote office, yeah, you could, 3 nodes might provide a little bit more resiliency, but you got to balance how much money you're going to spend versus how much availability do you need. And so I think that we see a lot of, for most environments, a 2-node HA system is going to be more than applicable. And then, like Max said, if you need more nodes, his solution and others can grow to it. So what we tend to recommend is at least have the ability to start at 2 nodes, and then if you want more, that's obviously your business decision to make. You don't want to have that business decision forced upon you.
Right.
Max, I'm going to take this question just because it's sort of analyst in nature. Do I see a time where HyperV will be more popular than VMware? And you can certainly comment on this if you want, Max. I don't think so. I mean, VMware has such a huge market lead at this point, but I do think that HyperV will continue to make gains. I think that what I think we'll see is actually a lot of very mixed environments where you'll see a mixture of HyperV and VMware, and both are used for, say, different tasks or functions, and because I think there's a highly focused effort, even in large enterprises, to really drive down the cost of licensing, and HyperV is clearly a way to do that. And as the product continues to improve, as it's made significant improvements over the last few years, I think we'll continue to see that happening. So I think that, and I think the other key part of this is still remains the cloud. It depends on how well both of these companies do their cloud integrations, and which of those appeals to customers as well. Any thoughts on your side, Max? I mean, you guys obviously have a VMware product as well. So, I guess from both of our standpoint, I don't know if we really care, because we're focused on the storage problems. But what are your thoughts?
Well, I would say that each product will find its niche, and we may see that with tenths for VMware, as far as I've read, more than 39% of companies who are planning to deploy virtualization are considering VMware, but we do see that a lot of companies look for Hyper-V in their branch locations. So we may see that VMware's environments are actually bigger and more expensive, but we may see much more smaller Hyper-V deployments, which actually do more work than the central VMware deployments in big office.
Interesting take. So question specifically on your guys' product, Max, what Windows license do I need to install StarWind?
Actually, any Windows license. StarWind can also install on the free Hyper-V server, which is a really good solution where you have free operating system which supports clustering and supports Hyper-V, and that's basically a really good start for virtualization for SMBs. So the only upfront investment is the servers, Windows licenses for the actual virtual machines, and StarWind licenses, which is, I think, a really good offer for SMBs.
Okay. So adding on to the high availability question, StarWind can scale up to 64 nodes. That's great. But opposed to other solutions, can you actually mirror data across more than 2 nodes? So can I have the same LUN mirrored across 2 or 3 or 4 nodes?
Yeah, you definitely can mirror the data between 3 nodes, and we do have 4 and up to 8 node mirrors available as well, but we only give them on demand because we don't really see anyone willing to buy it. So 3 nodes is a quite common scenario nowadays, especially with the fact that with 3 nodes you can use RAID 0 to maximize your storage density. So you have 3 copies of your data, so you don't really need RAID 10 or RAID 1 in the system. You can just use RAID 0, and that becomes a very sweet spot for an SSD RAID 0 in a server, which can compete with all SaaS solutions in price, but gives unbeatable performance.
So, okay, and let me. There's a price question that came in, Max, and I know that that's not your area of focus typically. So we'll have. In fact, I'll push the slide up now. We have a slide here with some contact info, so that if you want some specific pricing, you can get that there. But needless to say, very affordable. I think would be a fair way to summarize, and you can get the exact pricing from the sales folks over at StarWind. Here's one that came in, Max, that I think is a good one. Is can I use StarWind as a NAS?
Definitely. You can use StarWind as a basic NAS, and then you can use StarWind as a highly available NAS. Moreover, StarWind now supports working with scale-out file server, which gives customers an ability to configure a scale-out file server backend and then use SMB3 and also SMB Direct, which is direct memory access to the file server, basically very fast access to your storage using file level protocol instead of block level protocol. This gives a very fast storage, and it's also very easy to manage.
Okay. So we have a few more questions in the queue that we'll get to, and then we'll probably have time for a couple more if anybody wants to ask. So again, you can click on the Ask a Questions button and still get your question answered on this session. So Max, the next question is, can StarWind operate on VMware vSphere?
Definitely. StarWind does offer a free product for VMware vSphere. So it may sound weird, but we have a product with limited storage capacity, which can work on 2 VMware servers and provide highly available storage for those 2 VMware servers. That works on all VMware licenses, and that's a time-limited offer. So I think we only have it active until September. But until that, everyone who wants to use StarWind in VMware environments, they can do it completely for free, especially if they use free VMware license and they get free StarWind license.
Okay. So another one came in here, and I'll start with this one, Max, and then kind of let you add to it. What type of drives do you suggest using in the server? Well, for me, the good news is we can use server-side hard drive technology, and our cost savings, though, should come from the fact that we don't have to invest in a dedicated storage controller and not necessarily a complex dedicated storage network. But you shouldn't go out and get the cheapest possible hard drives you can get your hand on. These should still be pretty good quality and generally pretty good performing drives. We have redundancy, we have all those capabilities, but you want to have good technology here as well. So we recommend to look for enterprise class hard drives and SSDs or flash drives. Max, what do you guys tend to recommend? I guess the hardware compatibility list is also a big determining factor as well, right?
Right, and it's not really our hardware compatibility list, but it's the hardware compatibility list of the server manufacturer. So let's say two biggest server manufacturers will not tolerate a desktop-grade SATA drive inside the enclosure. It will not be recognized.
Exactly.
Standard storage of the server and really the disk types you would like to use in the server, this closely depends on the type of the performance you'd like to get from the system. If it's a backup unit, it's all SATA drives. If it's a virtualization platform, then it would be SATA drives or SAS drives acting as backend, and then few SSDs acting as your layer 2 caching, and your RAM acting as your layer 1 caching. If you're trying to build a design which is close to in-memory computing, that means lots of RAM, so StarWind pins all the deduplicated data inside RAM, and you have your virtual machines just there, and let's say SSDs as tier 2 storage to offload some of the reads and then have it as a non-volatile storage layer for your system. So as I said, it really depends.
Okay. And then another good question, and this will probably be the last one we have time for, and I think this is really going to be specific to you guys, although I'm curious to hear what the answer is. What type of network do you suggest to use connecting, say we go with that either 2-node or 3-node type of configuration, what kind of network do you see works best? Can I go all the way down to just a simple 1 gig network, or do you recommend 10 gig or something trunked? What do you recommend?
So I've seen 3 to 4 virtual machine environments working completely fine on 2 gigabit links as crossovers between the servers. For bigger environments, we typically see a 10 gigabit card in each server, a dual port one, and crossover cables between 2 servers. And this grows up to 3 servers without any 10 gigabit switching, and I would say 10% of our current customers use it in high-performance computing, and they use 40 gigabit cards directly connected between each other for synchronization.
Okay. Let's see. So that clears our last question. So thanks everybody for your participation today. Those are great questions. Max, thanks very much for joining us today.
Thank you.
And for additional information, you've got the contact information for both companies on the slide in front of you. You can go to our websites, email us, hit us on Twitter, and various things like that. For my part, I'm George Crump, lead analyst with Storage Switzerland. Thank you very much for joining us today, and have a great rest of your day.